Welcome everybody. Welcome to uh, English Bilingualism 101 with Dr. Verghese. I'm Matthew Verghese. Today we will talk about what happens in the brain of a person who learn to process two languages simultaneously, as what our Sakura, baby Sakura, did when she was communicating with her father in one language and mother in another language and with others in other different languages. She processed these her thoughts in these two languages first, and at that time the brain turns into bilingual brain. And bilingual brain is something that has been discovered recently by neuroscientists who work in neurological matters about brain and what happens in the brain. Uh, you know, so the knowledge about bilingualism actually help them to understand how to make proper surgery in the brain without damaging the neurons when they are treating these patients with time. So they found that there is a substantial change in the brain of a person who process two languages at the same time simultaneously, as what baby Sakura does when she communicates with each of her parents and with people around her. So this vitality of the brain is the vitality of mentalists. Okay. Now, this neuroscientists have found that there is a area in which the language is being processed. This Broca's area in the brain is the area where the languages are being processed. Actually, this knowledge was there from ancient time. I think in the 19th century, Ferdinand Saussure actually introduced the idea of language faculty, and it invigorated research in language for several, at least more than 100 years. But you must understand, this idea was not actually introduced in the modern time. It was introduced thousands of years ago in classical Greek, in classical India. Uh, these ideas were there. So I will discuss about the Indian idea of language and all later, and also about bilingual brain later. Today we again will talk about what is called the vitality of mentalists. And this vitality of mentalists is a given, the nature God-given ability which we don't use while learning a language or learning to use a language. We still consider the language is an object. So first we have to learn the words and grammar and all rules and all these things. After that only we can use a language. But that is not what exactly happening in the mind of a child like Sakura, and she processes many languages with the vitality of mentalese. And the mentalese, when it can process two languages, that vitality increases into a multipolarity. It is not one language that is being processed in the brain, but it can process many languages at the same time. So you don't understand the grammatical changes or syntactical changes that happens when one switch from one language to another. For example, if you are speaking in English, you are processing of the language actually follows one way, like as I was telling the other day, you say you go home, anata wa ie ni kimasu. This structuring, in fact, have different procedures. And these procedures are very important. So, when baby Sakura or I use these procedures, we are not consciously knowing that this is the procedure, this is what the procedure we follow. In that case, I don't think children at 5 years are able to understand the procedures and speak different languages. They do a automatic process, like you switch telephone switcher to transfer from, or if you can put a modern gadgets as an example, you have a telephone, smartphone app. You can open one procedure and then do that. You can close that and open another one. You can process that. Like this, you process different languages in your brain by switching over from one to another. And this procedure is actually possible without knowing what the programmatic details behind that, all these, each of the apps. Somewhat similarly, a child processes English, a child processes Japanese, child processes Hindi, or child processes Malayalam, child processes Chinese. These procedures are very intricate, but without knowing the details of that, the child can do it. And that vitality can be developed only through practice. So, in fact, what baby Sakura does all the time is that when she gets a message, she automatically realigns the words and phrases and understand it. How this happens? This is what a question many students ask me. So I normally say, how can you listen to classical Western music? How can you listen Indian pop music, or that is, for example, if you listen Western classical music for the first time, maybe you don't be able to understand it, or you don't be able to appreciate it. But by listening again and again, that music will actually generate a kind of enthusiasm, a sound procedure in your mind. I mean, it doesn't mean that Everybody can enjoy it. That is dependent on a person's willing. But everybody has the ability to appreciate music. Similarly, you have the ability to appreciate a language, and you can speak in any of the languages that is available to you. eh? So, what has to be done is we need to practice. And practicing, as I told you, you have to think effectively in English. This procedure requires a long discussion, but one of the method that a student in a classroom can follow is think directly in English. This I always follow in my class. Directly in this language, don't translate, don't use any translation tools or even dictionary. Try to process the thought with available words and phrases he or she has. And when they put an effort and write freely, what they are doing in that process is what Sakura does when she communicates in English with her father. She tried to bring thoughts into the order of the language. And free writing, in fact, create this order unknowingly inside the brain without an heavy effort of thinking in the language. I remember in my classes, students normally find it very difficult to write even a sentence. But then I gave them practices to do free writing, and with some initial hiccups, they come into line, and then they develop very natural sentences. Every year I used to give them an assignment, a report assignment of a long essay for 1,500 to 2,000 words. And most of them very successfully write it. Okay? And free writing is a very important way to develop your linguistic skills. And when you are in your late teens and early 20s, your brain is very active, and the active brain will be able to process a language in this way, almost similar to the way Sakura does when she processes English and Japanese simultaneously. The involvement of Japanese in this case has to be avoided, or any other language. Suppose an Indian learning English, he has to avoid Hindi coming into his or her mind while doing this free writing process. On the other hand, most of the classes today follow structured writing. And structured writing is the first you find the grammatical order, how to develop these thought, like the lead sentence and, like that, expanding in this procedure. But the basic problem is that when they try to develop the content, they don't have a thought that is leading them in English or in the language which they are writing. Always the thought will be stuck with the mother tongue, and that will not help them to develop what is called a mentally centric approach to language. We will discuss about free writing and structured writing in the next lecture, next talk I will close here and switch to Japanese. So 今日は私たちこれフリーライティング使ってどうやって、言葉を学ぶ。この言葉というのは本土で見たら私たちのスピーチアクトのために話すのために使える一つ道具です。あなたは日本語で話すとき、日本語のトゥールを使って話す。英語を話すとき、英語のトゥールを使って話す。英語の順番と日本語の順番、structuring procedure are different. So これを私たち、さくらちゃん、子供の頃やったように私たちやる。さくらちゃんこの単語を分かってるとき、さくらちゃんのメンタリーアクティブになる。それから英語で話すことを、あれを単語をまとめること、あれどうやってやってるというような理由、大体誰にもわからない、これやれるできる。あれは本当で日本語で話すとき言われるより違うです。これどうせと言ったら、このメンタリストはこういうような力を持ってる。言葉によってああいうような力、メンタリストは持ってるから。それで、これをさくらちゃんの心を私たち作ると言ったら、これやれる一つこと、書くです。直接英語で書くです。あれ、書くとき、多分この順番間違いとかそういうようなことを変えるけども、始めたら、だんだんゆっくりこのプロシージャーを学ぶできる。フリーライティング作ることをやるとき、大体生徒さん、簡単にこのプロシージャーは頭の中作れるできる。あれは別の場合でできない。この作れることというのは私たち本当で練習しないでこれできない。これいっぱい訳して学んでもできない。難しいです。私この前話したように私の一人友達イングリッシュで行ってイングリッシュの大学に入ってイングリッシュから出資をして英語の先生になっても英語を簡単に話できない。やっぱり人たちいるああいうの。あれどうせと言ったら彼この順番して学ばないからですね。それ順番にして学ぶために私たち、あなたたちフリーライティングあまりこれ正しいですか正しいじゃないですかと単語を選んで考えによって順番に入れることをやったら大体ゆっくりあなたわからないように脳はバイリンガルになる。脳の神経はバイリンガル使うような力をもらう。あれは誰にもわからないようにさくらちゃんやってる。あれ一番大事なことだからフリーライティングすること原因にして、言葉を学ぶときこの順番正しの場合で作れるできる。そう私多分さっきの授業でこの free writing tho structured writing no nakageru are nakaru ano chigayo oshete ageru. So with this I conclude my talk today. If you find this talk useful, please subscribe to it. I will put 2 videos every week mostly, and I invite you to watch all the videos and practice your language at home properly. Becoming bilingual is absolutely necessary. And if this video is useful to you, share it with your friends and subscribe, like. It would help me to make more videos, and I want to get a response from people who are watching this. With this I conclude. See you next time. Bye.